So, welcome everyone. Thank you very much for being here. For those of you who doesn't know me yet, I'm Ibrahim, and I am the international student representative for Glass Art Society. Many of you knows me already, I guess. Before we get started, before we get the program started, we have some logistic and also some online community to practice it review. Well, we will be recording today's program and posting on our YouTube channel. So hope you will keep your cameras on, but do it so only if you're really comfortable with it. But of course, we would love to see you, that many of you just are on already. And we also ask you to keep yourself on mute unless you are speaking. But if you have any questions or any comments, you're welcome to grab the microphone and unmute yourself. You can also use other section of the raise hand function down below so our moderators can see you that you have something to say, or you can just use the chat box. We will try our best to address to all questions. And as our online community practice goes, we ask that everyone be respectful and speak from their own experiences. So we want to acknowledge that some of us are currently on indigenous lands, and all across the world, people are dealing with issues of colonialism. And for those of you haven't been to Glass Student Meetup before, their monthly virtual meetups mean to create a space for students from around the world to discuss glass materials and processes. We have lectures, demos, and attend the virtual studio tours, meet leaders in the glass community, and more and more. This program is run by myself and by our North American student representative, Paige Morris. Hi, Paige. And yeah, with that being said, let's get our program started. We will be hosting today Anna Mlasowsky and Matthew Szösz. I hope I pronounced the last names correctly, Szösz and Mlasowsky. Here, I would like to give only some brief information about you, since we will already hear from you about yourself. Anna and Matt have worked independently alongside with each other and collaborating as educators and makers. Both have received numerous awards and residencies. Together, two will discuss their artistic practice and their journey as makers. Without further ado, I will turn it to Anna and Matt. Thank you so much for joining us for today. It was really nice to see you again after 3 months, but it feels like more than 1 year. But hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us, Ibrahim. This is a great chance to get to talk to a lot of people at once.
Yeah.
Anna, do you want to go first or shall I?
No, it's not my day. I have no extension cord. I need to find a charger. So you go first and I put my camera out and then I come back.
Okay. Well, like I said, it's nice to be here. And it's actually really nice to see a bunch of different time zones getting together at the same time, and people actually being able to talk across continents in real time. Feels like the future. I think because there's two of us today, Anna and I will both be giving kind of an abbreviated talk. And some of you have probably seen most of it before, but I think we're going to keep it to maybe 20, 25 minutes each, and hopefully we'll have some time for some questions, something like that. And I guess I should just go ahead and get started.
Yeah, sounds good.
So I'm going to try to get this working here. Let's see. Okay, you should just be seeing a screen with my name.
Exactly, this is what we are seeing right now.
I'm Matthew Szösz. I'm somebody that kind of came to glass by accident as a material. I was trained primarily as a furniture maker and a designer, and ended up kind of working with glass after my formal training. And because of that, I've got kind of a non-traditional approach to it. I've got kind of holes in what might be thought of as my kind of traditional glass training. I don't blow glass. I never got the kind of foundation in glass, and most of what I do is kind of self-taught. And a lot of it is me working in ways that I'm familiar with from other materials and bringing it into glass. So let's just go ahead and get started.
Matt, is there no sound to these?
I usually start with this video because it kind of it gives a little bit of a sense of what it looks like when I am working in the hot shop. There tends to be a fair amount of chaos of things flying around. A lot of what I like to think of as improvisational problem solving. A lot of what I do is based on kind of trial and error experimentation. I am kind of fascinated by the idea that the way that we make things greatly affects what the things are that we make. So I try to spend a lot of my time figuring out different ways of making things, different ways of using glass as a material, trying to figure out different purposes for ways of using the material that we already have. And a lot of that is a kind of a trial and error process where I will start in on a project, have it fail, change something, have it fail again, and continue that iteration until we get somewhere that's hopefully interesting, even if it's not necessarily the direction that I had anticipated. Failure, I think, is a wonderful tool for learning about things, or it's at least a necessary part of learning about things. And it's usually a signpost that you're actually getting somewhere. If you draw something, sketch it into your sketchbook, go into the shop, produce it, and it looks exactly like your sketch, then in some ways you didn't really learn anything. You did something that you already knew how to do. And for me, every time I fail, I'm being taught something about the material, and the material is telling me something that I didn't know. So I kind of welcome failure as a component of my process. And that little video was a series of experiments to try to figure out how this gentleman, this is Paul Sievert, he had a factory near Dresden in 1905, and he would blow glass bathtubs in 30 seconds using steam. And you can see the yard of the factory there with the bathtubs. And that was one of a number of different kind of processes that he had that we wouldn't necessarily recognize today, but were kind of shockingly effective. Anyway, like I said, I was originally trained as a designer, and had kind of a goal of being a furniture maker. And then when I got out of undergraduate, I abandoned that almost immediately, and decided that I'd gone to art school in order to make art and not to end up making cabinets. So I ended up looking around for a sculptor that I could apprentice with, and just kind of by accident, I worked for a glass caster named Dan Clayman. And then for the next 8 or 9 years, I worked for a whole succession of different glass artists, kind of doing all the things in the glass shop other than the actual blowing. And this was kind of it was basically a period of apprenticeship, and it allowed me to kind of get comfortable with the material, see the material in a lot of different contexts, see the way that different artists approach their work, different ways that artists got their practice to work for them so that they could continue to make artwork. And then after about 8 or 9 years of that, I went back to graduate school. And kind of the nice thing is that when I went back to graduate school after that really extended apprenticeship, I felt very ready to do whatever I wanted. And this was one of my first projects in graduate school. It's something that I kind of still do on a semi-regular basis. So these are they're a series of inflatables made simply by just taking window glass and putting it into the kiln, fusing it together, and then pulling it out when it's hot and inflating it with compressed air. They're kind of like pool toys or certain origami things that are inflatable, and they're basically envelopes. Now, when I started doing them, I made this little video just kind of by accident because the first one that I tried worked, and then the next 10 or 12 didn't. So I started trying to film what was going on so that I could have a better look at maybe why these things were failing. And then when it came time to present the work, I cut together a bunch of these little kind of what it intended to be kind of a diagnostic tool, these little videos into that thing, and kind of put an offensive soundtrack to it and showed it next to the work. And people liked the video more than they liked the work. And for me, that was kind of an important moment because for me, when I make these things, there's a challenge in producing them. But then once they're done, that's fine. They're great. They're off on their own, but I'm not really interested in them anymore. Like, I don't need to have them sitting around occupying space with me. And the thing that I really enjoy, the thing that kind of makes me come back into the studio on a regular basis are kind of these moments of surprise and moments of wonder when glass does something unexpected. Because glass has so many wonderful kind of behaviors and properties and does so many things. It's impossible to kind of fully know glass and know all the things that it'll do. So as you play around with it, there are always these kind of moments where there's kind of a natural serendipity where things are really exciting. And video turned out to be a really great way for me to kind of share that excitement with people. The thing that I really enjoyed coming into the shop, and it would keep me coming back for more, kind of just like these wonderful little moments of working with glass. So that's kind of a it's another variation on a tube draw, and I think you can see it's kind of an enormous bubble. The video ends right before it kind of shatters and disintegrates. And a lot of the things that I do may be only temporary, may have a very short lifespan, and I'm fine with that. Kind of the fragility of glass and the kind of there's something about the fragility of glass and the way that it has a tendency to expire, to break, to exist in the world only under certain conditions. I find that really appealing, and I kind of like it's got a very natural corollary to the rest of our lives, where a lot of things are temporary. Our existence here is temporary, and it makes it a bit more like a living thing to me to know that that it's going to die. So this was an experiment that kind of came out of watching beginners learning to gather and seeing the glass that they would drag out of the furnace, where it'd be very, very hot, and then when it hits the floor, it's got a very particular kind of behavior, a bit like honey or oil, something very viscous, where it doubles back in on itself and creates these kind of like really nice little ribbons. And I thought that had this really great kind of line weight and texture. And I wanted to see if maybe it was possible to make a large-scale drawing tool with it, where you could kind of capture that characteristic of glass and use it as a mark-making tool. So that's what this was. And I found you could get out of the hot shop and down the stairs in about a block away before I ran out of glass. This is another experiment in making things. It was based on kind of the same thing. It was taking that particular pattern that glass makes and trying to figure out how to apply it to a larger object where the two would have an appropriate relationship, and where the object would kind of reflect or be able to use that behavior of glass to help define itself. So these are kind of lace doilies made from glass. And a lot of what I do ends up being making the tools in order to make the object. So obviously there's that big machine that was made there, and then also I'd have to make the furnace and the crucibles and all of the vats that were used, the kiln shelves that were used for putting it away. And glass is just, it's kind of notoriously difficult and only does what it wants. So there tends to be a lot of kind of fine tuning of process. And then obviously once you've made a glass lace making machine, you have to make a big glass Elizabethan collar. So here's the Henry VIII collar. And we're running a little behind. I think I'm just gonna skip over this guy. This is a tree that falls over and then stands back up if you give it enough privacy and space. So it'll get scared if you get too close, and then if you leave it alone, it'll stand back up. I'm gonna play a picture by shining star, tempering the fire. We'll kind of move right along. This is again another piece that's it's just window glass heated up in the kiln, and in this case it's stretched rather than inflated. And these kind of large-scale versions of it, obviously they're too big to be annealed, and they're not structural enough to survive getting laid down or anything. So they get unfolded and they hang. They exist for 20 to 30 minutes, and then as they start to cool off without annealing, the stresses tear themselves apart. So there's this kind of life cycle of a birth and a lifespan, and then decay and death. And there's this kind of extended period of tension as you wait for this thing to come apart, to fall apart. And again, I kind of like that temporary nature of it, and the idea that that it's going to die, so you kind of need to treasure it while it's alive. I also did some work trying to figure out how to use this technique in a way where I could preserve the objects that came out of it. So I built myself a kiln that has a little crane inside it that helps these things unfold on their own. And you can see some of the things that come out of that. And then this is a little bit more recent body of work. I've been making glass rope, and then I could weave glass fiber to produce glass rope, and then I could knit or knot it over a form, shape it, and then fire it. And because of the characteristics of a particular type of glass, when it's fully fused, it doesn't beat up or get soft. It retains all of its detail. You see all of the, and you can kind of see how flexible the rope is there. So I can take that rope and then knot it up over a form, and then after it's fired, it preserves all the details of the knots. And it's very freeing in that, like, you can make almost any shape that you want with it, and it's also kind of just a very unique result. It's also very fragile, as you might imagine. And then I think the last thing that I'm going to share today is this is a project from a few years ago. I got lucky enough to have a a residency at a place called Starworks, which is a little tiny place in North Carolina that is an abandoned athletic sock factory. And they've got loads of just kind of empty space. The factory is huge. It's 4 or 5 football pitches. It's quite large. And when I was there, I don't know if they still do this. I was there kind of early in their existence. If you wanted to install something, you could just go find a place in the factory and install a sculpture on a permanent basis. And I kind of always wanted to make a giant glass iceberg. So I built this. It's laid out on the computer, and then the frame is laser cut and welded together. And the glass panels are all hand cut from templates and then attached to the frame. And it's about 3 meters up to the top. And it melts continually, or it drips. So it appears to be melting constantly. And I think that's all the time I'm going to take up today. I'm going to try to keep it short so that Anna has a chance to talk. And I think we're a bit after 5. So that's going to be it for me. And thanks.
Thanks, Matt, for this great presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
If anybody has any questions, we could. Do you want to do that right now, or should we do it together?
Yeah, it's better. I don't know.
Do it now. If anybody has any questions, we can take a few minutes and answer them.
Yeah, nobody has questions, put them in the chat, and let's continue.
Okay.
And we do them in the end.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try to do this here. I can't show any of my notes, so I'm gonna mumble my way through this presentation. Okay. I also don't see anybody, so I don't know anything that's going on. Can you see my presentation?
We can see your presentations.
Good.
What about your other students?
We still see the notes, Anna.
I don't see. Oh, it's full screen. Can you see it?
Nope.
Let's do full screen. Now you see yourself and this, and you see it now.
That's it.
Okay, well, let's see how this is gonna go. So my name is Anna Mlasowsky. I'm Matt's partner, and I come originally from Germany, and I live now in the US here with him. I always like to start my presentation with this video. It's a small documentary that was done in the 1990s, 1991, by a documentary filmmaker, and it's my neighborhood that I grew up in Germany, because I grew up in East Germany, so on the communist side of the wall, and this is taken just after the wall came down. And I got really influenced by my environment, which was, in this area there was a lot of punk rock, techno, anarchy. They printed their own currency. You can see here they became an independent republic in Germany, and this kind of alternative way of life and what was going on in my environment really shaped me. So a lot of my work deals with questions of, or ideas, investigations of belonging, otherness, queerness, and identity. This is from a series from 2012 called Atlas. It's broken sheet glass that I broke and then laminated together and raised into these kind of topographies. And I, as a way of so disobedience is a really important aspect of my work. And to this form of disobedience of kind of starting at the end where other people finish working with the material and starting there as the starting point to investigate the material. So I made a whole series of works with cracks and broken glass. I did in this series also these series of prints, and I was really interested in how the void becomes the line, the physical line on the paper with the ink filling the void, and the material, the glass, is invisible because there's no ink on that paper. So like the reversal of positive and negative, of line and void. And I'm often do a lot of work where I use kind of opposites or reversal of situations as a way to make work. It's a detail shot of one of them. And membrane is also a piece from this time. I don't know if you can hear the videos. And it's a sheet of broken tempered glass that was laminated with silicone, and then a body is moving underneath. And this piece went together with this chair where the fabric was draped over. And I was really fascinated how something kind of stiff and hard and flat could turn into something flexible and really textile-like in a very behave a very unglassy way. And it was purchased as the first video work purchase for the Corning Museum of Glass and also the European Museum of Modern Glass in 2013. My home has played a big role in my work and has kind of always had changing ways of how I use it. This is a piece from 2009. It's the oldest piece I show today. It's one of my first video attempts. And my great-grandmother used to make products with the wool from her sheep in Germany. And that's how she like got herself and her kids through the Second World War, trading goods for the products she made. And when I moved to Finland, my mom gave me a pair of socks that my great-grandmother had made. And made me remember the spinning wheel that was in my great-grandmother's house that had become from a really important item into this kind of useless piece of decorative furniture because nobody knew how to use it. And I was kind of interested in how I connect her practice with my practice and thinking about technology in the past as kind of an important stepping stone for the future, and how remembering the past and connecting with our past is the basis for our humanist culture behaviors in the present. So I ended up spinning the glass. These are all plaster spindles that I made for the spinning wheel. And it's a stop motion animation because I did not know how to do video, and a friend was like, oh, it's the best and it's the easiest, just do that. And it ended up being actually really difficult. And then the pieces were displayed with the videos as well. The idea of home has changed in my work as I have changed places and cultures a lot. I've been living abroad now for 19 years, and the last 9 of them in the US. So in 2019, this is a private performance. Not all my work makes it on my website or gets ever shown. This is a private performance from 2019 in which I stitched the word Heimat, home, or place of belonging into my hand, and then watched it how it would kind of work its way out of my skin within, took about 2 weeks. And I really liked how the word from Heimat changed to he, at, and then in the end it was only at, which is also a description for place in English, being at somebody's house, being somewhere. And this is a piece that is based on the Hungersteine, the hunger stones, which you find in riverbeds throughout Germany and Europe. And they are drought markers. They're big boulders that only become visible during drought. And then every time they become visible, the date is engraved and the line is marked. And they date back to the 15th century, and they're in all big rivers in Europe. And the one closest to my hometown also has another inscription that says, "Wenn du mich siehst, dann weine," when you see me cry, because it was always an imminent drought and famine that was looming with these stones become visible. So I made an installation with video and cast glass objects and found rocks, slip cast clay that dried out on the floor, and then these solid glass forms, dichroic glass forms that are kind of water droplets. And I was kind of looking at different associations to water and drought. There were also a three-channel video piece in the space in which a woman was gurgling, crying, spitting and snotting, and metal would get liquid in a hand and run. And so there was all of these different textures and associations to water and drought. The way I've used video or a glass in my work, sorry, without notes, I say whatever. The way I've used glass in my work has also changed from it being really the medium that provides the content and context, with early work really being about the tradition of glassmaking and tradition and technologies of how we make things, and I would find alternative ways of making glass. This is a piece from 2015 after I'd moved to the US. And I made it in collaboration with Ellen Jingsu, a friend of mine, where we made this kaleidoscopic enclosure and did a performance. And we're really interested in how as foreigners, you have mirrors that just reflect your environment rather than interpret it. And as immigrants, you have this way of trying to assimilate and become similar. And so you reflect your environment, you copy and repeat what they do. And so we had this 4.5-hour performance at a Velocity Dance Center in Seattle, where we would perform inside this space and have our bodies merge and becoming kind of this new personality. And this is just a recording of the performance. And it was really interesting, the interactions we had with people through this kaleidoscopic space. This is now this piece, and the next couple of pieces are from a solo exhibition I had 2019 at the Richard and Dolly Mass Gallery. It's a SUNY Purchase College in the US. The piece here is a quantification of data. These are the female hormonal cycle over the course of a month, how they ebb and flow. And it's a piece that you could walk through, and it's tubing that's wired together. And I got kind of started on this project by reading about symmetry in architecture and quantification of numbers. And there's a gendering of numbers in architecture where female numbers are avoided because they're considered weak, and male numbers are preferred. So all religious architecture, Christian architecture, Western architecture, relies on male numbers. So if you look at how many, so even and odd numbers are considered male and female, and you will only find arches in the amount of arches next to each other in male number counts instead of female. And even in the Bible, they already said, and I was really interested, how would architecture or an architectural intervention look like if we would take the female makeup as the baseline? Would we not have any angles and corners? So I see this as an architectural intervention. And each of these sections can get rolled up into a bundle and carried elsewhere and set up again. This is a piece also from this exhibition where I put sandblasted glass sheets in front of TV screens, and on the TVs were playing advertisement that was gender specific. So on one screen was only advertisement geared towards men and the other for women. And the sandblasted sheet would filter out all of the kind of forms and would turn it into these big color fields. And so I was really interested in the color coding for consumer products that really try to keep us in this heteronormative way of thinking and associating and liking certain things. So underneath there's a list of which of the advertisements I used for which of the screens. This is a piece from 2016, Borderlands, and it's from a series of pieces I made between 2015 and 2019, where I used was very interested in alchemy and the intersex being as a way to explore identity. And so based on the principles of alchemy, in which we have different minerals that have associated different qualities, male and female qualities, I made these copies of obsidian rock, which is the male potential, the darkness and the night, and turned them into these female copies of themselves, these opal, that have the whole spectrum of the light in them, and for me are kind of the perfect encompassing intersex being. And there is these were all used in a video piece that has 4 different locations, and the human body is the agent that aids the transformation of these minerals in this context of trying to unify the self into this higher being, the third gender. And the videos is 8 minutes long, so you would have to watch it on my website. They're always too long for such presentations here. But there's 4 distinct locations, and this tunnel space that connects everything, an inflatable space that I made up, and then a volcanic and an ice space to kind of have the hot and the cold, the male and the female, the day and the night is like darkness and bright. And currently I'm here at Tyler School of Art working on a new piece. I've done a lot of work with science in the past as well, and here I'm working on a piece that investigates rare earths and rare earth mining, which we use a lot in glass for anything from polishing to making clear glass, where we need cerium and colors, and I work with color shifting glass. And so this is a little excerpt from a video I filmed last summer where I made these handmade mirrors, and these are all mining symbols. I'm also, while I'm here at Tyler School of Art, also a visiting fellow at the Science History Institute, and so I've been using their archive to research in their collection texts and imagery about mining of rare earth. So that's an ongoing project that I'm working on right now. And this is another piece I did in collaboration with scientists. So I'm attaching a sheet of aluminum to a speaker cone, and I have an amplifier and a power source that's connected to my computer. And now I sprinkle black glass powder onto this sheet of glass. And then on my computer, I play frequencies. They're all within the audible range. And whenever I hit a resonant frequencies, the pattern change. If I don't hit a resonant frequency, no new patterns will form. So there's 250 patterns within the human audible range, and the higher the frequency, the more complex the pattern. In this space, these pieces then were fused in a kiln and hung in a space, and I worked with a composer to turn all of these different frequencies into a sound piece so that you could see what you would also hear. And it became this like visible sound cloud. I did a whole series of working with sound because I have a hearing problem, and I was really interested in how I could understand sound through a physical form. And those took a couple of years and had a lot of different partners because it was a relatively complex piece. This is also a piece that came out of a collaboration with scientists. I was an artist in resident at Corning, not at the museum, but at their research facility. And this is a cloak. It's a wearable that's made out of bulletproof glass that Corning developed as body armor. So I worked with 2 dancers and together with them, we developed this choreography mimicking animals, protective, like shielded animals, protectiveness. I don't know in English right now what to really call this without notes. I forget words. And this is a 1 minute part of the long performance. The performance is 20 minutes. And it was live performed a lot. And only because the glass is bulletproof can you even perform with it, because it's shatter resistant and doesn't break. Any other glass would break during this performance. I really like this collaboration with dancers in my work, and I hope to do it more. The pandemic has pretty much put everything on hold. I'm going to skip this now. This is another piece. It was my last performance piece just before the pandemic shut everything down, in which these two dancers have glass strings stretched between their backs. And it was really a lot about how in relationships we often have to kind of break what connects us in order to be able to really find together again. And I'm going to skip this here because of time. I also run an exhibition space in Seattle. It's not a glass space, but it's a window gallery that I started during the pandemic, where I show artists from all over. We currently have an exhibition series going on with artists from Eastern Central Europe. And this is from last year's exhibition series, where we had artists from Latin America. I work with a lot of different curators that bring in artists. And the last thing that I do that I hope you all sign up for is a curatorial project in which I invite glass artists to do non-glass things. You can sign up for it on my website. It's free to receive it. You would receive every month an artwork into your email inbox. And the way it works, that the artists create a piece, and then by scrolling, a narrative is told, a story. And in case of transparency is from Jens Pfeiffer. And it's really a wonderful piece that somehow talks about glassy ideas without having any glass in it. So you get an email every month and an artwork in this email. So I hope you might want to do that. And this is it for me. I have a website, and also for my gallery, there is an Instagram account. Okay, and I think we are like completely time out.
It was super. Thank you. Thank you.
This was a run through.
Yeah, I know, but it's been amazing for both of us.
Okay, good. So I guess if anybody has questions for Matt and me, now would be a good time to kind of ask them for both of us. They come in the chat.
Can you see the chat box, or should I read for you out?
No, I can see it.
Okay.
I think I am more into the digital world than Matt. I mean, this the curatorial project that I run with having making art for the email inbox is something that I really enjoy. And I think it's a great format to change work up from being in exhibition spaces. Shipping is really expensive. So showing work digitally can certainly make it much easier to show work. But I also find it a bit difficult. There's tactileness that gets all lost online. There's a lot of illusion, and we live in a world that's only illusions anyways. So I prefer still things that happen in the real world around me. I think we spend way too much time in front of screens, so I don't want to do more things on screens. And I also, if we really are, I mean, as glass artists, it's always a difficult conversation to have, but if you're worried about your carbon footprint, then don't make NFTs, because they're certainly not a great way to offset any of your carbon footprint, thinking of all the data storage and processing that's happening there and the energy it uses. So I'm kind of on both sides.
Well, I think yes and no for me. I mean, in some ways, a certain amount of digitalization is impossible to avoid making work these days. I mean, this is a digital platform right now. And just the amount of kind of communication that we do and the amount of presentation that we do every day that involves the computer, it's kind of inescapable. I mean, I would prefer to do as little digital stuff as I can, and I'm attached to my computer 6 hours a day, I think. that being said, for me, there's a real appeal to kind of the physical interactions of the world, and the idea of actual objects kind of providing a certain amount of integrity and truth in them, that it can be easy to dodge working with things digitally. When you actually have to make something and it needs to behave a certain way, or it behaves the way that it wants to, that has this real kind of sense of something where I'm interacting with something that's not of my own creation, that it's kind of a partnership with material. And I really enjoy that. That being said, there's certain things that you can do using the computer, or certain things that have become much, much easier to do using the computer with physical objects. And I'm thinking of CAD, I'm thinking of things like laser cutting, CNC machining, mold making, rapid prototyping, stuff like that. And to a certain degree, I am involved with that. That last project I showed, the Iceberg, was generated on the computer, and I'm currently making a larger meteorite that's similar. And I also I work for a large glass sculpture studio, and we do an enormous amount of kind of use of digital tools to produce glass artwork. So kind of where it's used, I never go out of my way, and I've kind of, it's been around for a while, and it's finally kind of starting to grow to the point where things are more useful than they are trouble to sort out and try to make fit into a practice. So it's becoming more and more a part of everybody's practice, I think.
That's a really good answer. So do you have more questions, or if you have a question, you can just write on the chat box or just grab the microphone to talk about it. No?
Great. Love it.
All
You
right.
can also email us questions if you're too shy to talk in public.
Yeah, I think Ibrahim will probably post our email somewhere if this gets.
They're also on our website. So
Yeah.
And there is a Instagram Messenger, Facebook Messenger, Telegram Signal, and WhatsApp, and anything you can imagine. And our phone numbers are even on our website. So it's very easy to talk to us if you're interested.
And I think our emails are actually just both of our names written out at gmail.com.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward. Well, thank you all for coming and spending some of your Wednesday with us.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you
for having
so much
us.
for joining us
Yes.
for this conversation today.
Thanks for bringing us in.